Hey everyone, this is SM Pratt, and it's time for the August 2021 Patreon exclusive Q&A video round 2. This is the final Q&A for the month that will close out the month of August, and then in September we'll do the MMR video, and for all the new Patreon members, that is where you ask your questions for these Q&As. Just type it below in the upcoming MMR, and then I'll answer the first 100 in the following Q&As in September. So we'll go ahead and get started with the first question from Paris, who says, where do you think the Versus series stands in terms of print runs compared to the Neo era that came before and other E series that followed? Bonus question, what is your favorite Versus artwork? Paris, student of animals, no magical powers. Yeah, that's tough for favorite art. I like how they do the energy for one illustrator. So Kamiya had to choose him for all the plant types. Charizard's another one that comes to mind. Lance's Charizard's really nice. Dragonites. Honestly, a lot of them. Even Umbreon, who I'm not too big on, is just a memorable art. So yeah, you have a lot of nice artwork in the Versus series. I really can't say enough about it. I think it's one of those subtle sleeper sets because it is Japanese exclusive. It's new back as well. I always think it's like a new back vending. That's how it logs in my brain, in my mind. But yeah, that's my take on Versus. Darcy says, hey Scott, I bought a Mysterious Pearl recently. It's been graded as spring winter rather than the usual winter challenge. Is there any way of telling the difference as the card was given out at both events? The spring one having less copies distributed. Also, you know anyone with the 2017 Champions League trophy? It's extremely difficult to find. Any thoughts on it as well would be great. Thanks again, Darcy. Yes, me, I had that one. Actually, that was a tough lesson learned when I bought my first grandma house. I sold it impulsively is a better word. I should have just, held it, and I didn't even know. I didn't even need the money. I had this weird mentality where I'm like, I need to have the exact amount of cash to buy the house. Because I did want to do a mortgage or anything. Anyway, therapy aside, yeah, it's a pretty rare card. As for Mysterious Pearl, I don't think there's a physical difference. Like, someone can let me know if there is. I'm pretty sure there isn't. So I don't think there's any validity in what the label says at the end of the day. If there's no physical difference, there's no proper way to really, designate, unless you have like some document or something that will tell you. So either way, I don't know anyone, at least as of recording this video, who really puts a premium on the difference between spring and winter. I think most people are just happy to have the card. Next up, we have Arnie. I forgot to do the drink lineup. Coconut water, as always. Got hot Japanese green tea, reserve for coconut water, and actually some food, some almonds over here in case I need some energy midway through the marathon. Arnie says, hey Scott, could you tell us a little more about the Japanese Versus series? This always happens at Patreon. I love it. It happens every single time. It's like everyone, there's like telepathy going on where there's like a theme that emerges. So what are your thoughts about 2001 Versus series? Was the first series that showed the new E series design. What are your thoughts on concerning collectability? Greetings from Switzerland, Arnie. Yeah, I think it's a great set, as mentioned earlier. It's got a lot of unique art, Japanese exclusive, ticks off a lot of things that I like. I forgot to mention earlier for Paris, I think you asked how it fares in relation to availability. I would say it's slightly more common than like the standard sets, but I think that's unfair because Versus is kind of a one-off. And yeah, I do believe it was technically the first E series set, if you call it that. For me, it's kind of like a hybrid, like set slash promo. Because like vending, in my mind, I'm like, is it a set? I consider promos slash set. So anyway, yeah, I believe it was the earliest one, like summer of 2001, and I think Expedition was like winter of 2001. So, as far as availability, kind of tying in 2-for-1 question here with Paris's, yeah, I would say maybe a little more common than the standard set, at least par with the standard. But again, that's not fair because it's its own thing. Kind of like web series. I don't really know the reasons why they did Versus and/or web. Those are kind of their own identities there in the E series era. But yeah, I think it's great for collectability. It'd be fun for a binder. It'd be fun, even if you want to do graded. It's not extremely challenging. A lot of nice arts. You definitely have like the Karen Umbreons or like the Charizard and things like that. They're gonna be a chase. But yeah, overall, I think it's a nice set. Delta Seeker says, thoughts on everyone's exciting battle. Is that the like black and white 2012 like release? I remember there was something. It was like decks or pre-constructed decks or something. So I don't have much thought on it. The fact I can barely recall it is pretty much my thought on it. So yeah, that's a super obscure one. That's one I'd really have to look through to formulate more opinion. I'd probably have maybe one in storage. I used to just buy one of everything when it came out, and that's something kind of reminds me of those family releases they do now or whatever at the Pokemon Center. So yeah, sorry man, I don't have much of an in-depth opinion on that one, but I vaguely remember it like during the black and white era, and not many people really talking about it. Dawn Hero says, "Hey Scott, I hope you're doing well. With each recent series TCG, there's been an interesting pattern. Starting with black and white, there were virtually no chase cards. Late X and Y introduced the Alt Art secrets, but they were gone in early Sun and Moon. But then Alt Arts returned later half of the series. Tag team, same process happened with Sword and Shields. What do you think Nintendo keeps taking these steps back and forth each time? It makes for a lot of boring sets early on and too many chase cards in the second half. Maybe they have to get used to new mechanics, or perhaps it's an attempt to prove a rarity power creep by settling the baseline each time. I don't know. All I know, everyone loves Alt Arts. It's a shame they only get them for half of these series. Death to Hyper Rares. Long live Alt Arts. Thanks, Dawn. Yeah, I agree. I think Alt Arts are really the perfect solution or formula for a great chase card. You know, we've been searching for one since the Gold Star era. Gold Stars were like the cream of the crop, and we've really been searching for that since. And I think Alt Arts are the closest to give me that feeling. Actually, Amazing Rares gave me that too a little bit, because they combined a lot of variables like textured, coming outside the border, a nice identity in my opinion. But yeah, some of them just didn't have the super rarity that you need. Like Gold Stars were tough to pull. Alt Arts, some of these Japanese Alt Arts are insane. Like I opened a whole case, I don't even think I got one. So yeah, those are definitely flirting with like the gold, literal and figurative gold standard, Gold Stars. But yeah, I couldn't tell you what Nintendo's thinking. I wish I knew. All I could say is I agree. What's done is done. You know, you can't change the old era, but I was initially excited about Hyper Rares. I'm not anymore. They're too played out. They look the same. After the first couple sets, I'm like, it's all the same. They look the same. It's not that exciting to get one. So yeah, it's just, I think Hyper Rares have really run their course. They tried. It was okay. And I think it's time for them to retire. TOF says, "Hey, it's T. Thanks for all you do. Do you think CGC Pristine 10s will ever reach Black Label 10 prices? Also, what shiny Pokemon would you like to see on a Pokemon card? Thanks." So I really don't have a great opinion on both Black Label or CGC Pristine. I think it's mainly for when the card you're buying isn't a challenge on its own, so you need to add layers and layers to make it a challenge, because inherently it's an item that's probably not rare. Obviously, if you had like a Black Label first edition base Charizard, that would be crazy, because it's, you know, an actually tough card to grade and it's expensive. But overall, I think the Black Label is probably going to be the front runner for a long time. I've talked about this in a previous Q&A. I think it just does more aesthetically, and I don't have a dog in the fight. Couldn't care less about either company, but I think the Black Label aesthetically does more, and I think and it's got more of a brand thing going on there, so I think that's why it's front runner. Probably will be for a while. Mr. Panda Chum says, "Hey Scott, I have a question about PSA grading and market reactions. If grading fees continue to increase, what happens to already graded cards and future graded cards? It's concerning these cards that are in the low tens of hundreds. For example, if there are cards going for about 60 here, and for modern cards, the grading fee, let's say, is 50, it's almost no margin after fees, etc. Will there be a market rise for those kind of cards, or will they just probably sit there on your years of experience?" You mentioned that time when WotC 9s were selling for the same price as Raw and grading. Will it be similar to that? Also, if you could just do a moment, imagine yourself back in the cat sitting days. If there was a set of cards you wanted graded, would you be more inclined to grade yourself, as it would be cheaper? Or would you purchase the set already graded to minimize your risk, but it's 5 times what you've spent fees grading? Side question, what's your favorite snack? All right, too many questions here. As for the what I would do already graded or graded, it depends on the set. So something that comes to mind for an already graded would probably be something that's difficult to grade, like maybe a Misaki set, or, you know, maybe first edition base or something like that. But overall, yeah, I do it myself, but I'm also first to market. I'm also not the norm. I tend to not grade as much now personally, unless it's like surefire things or things I've had in storage. So yeah, I'm flirting more towards with already graded at this point. But again, it's up to the person, the situation they're in, the set you're going after. There's a lot of variables involved. And as for the potential junk slab era question, which is basically what you asked, yeah, that inflection point of cards that just aren't worth more than the grading fee is going to be much more severe when PSA reopens. So PSA reopens and they still have a cheaper option of 20 bucks a card, it won't be too crazy. But if they keep $50 per card, there's going to be a lot of blood in the streets. There's going to be a lot of cards that just aren't worth grading that are already, or cards that are already graded that aren't going to clear that fee. And maybe if you grade them and it was cheaper, you can get your money out of it. But that's going to affect future prices. So if those cards go below 50 or whatever the line in the sand is, yeah, that's going to, affect people's incentive to send them in. So yeah, we're in uncharted territory. The linchpin is when PSA reopens. And when they do, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of cards that just aren't worth grading that, people think that the grading fee is going to be some type of universal minimum price in the market, and that's simply not true. There's plenty of supply out there and plenty of people who don't need, I have cards I have no money, like they're free to me. So if I sell them for 20 bucks or $50, that's still all profit. There's plenty of people in that boat. And also plenty of people who will just lose money too. There's plenty of people in that boat too. So yeah, that's probably going to be a scenario. It's just which cards, how severe is the big question. Martin says, hey Scott, thanks for all you do. I saw a question on the eBay collecting feature and wanted to piggyback off that. Do you have access to the beta, and do you currently add your cards for personal items or PSA registry personal items? I don't have much incentive to add non-eBay items to my collection right now, but do you think that it could become a de facto standard for documenting and sharing collections in the future? Appreciate the content insight. Yeah, that's a tough one. I've never really used a set registry, to be honest. It's just not my thing. It doesn't really, I don't fancy it. It doesn't really entice me. And the eBay beta, it's no surprise they're competing with any company that starts with a P. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it'll be the same type of deal. I could see it for like maybe people getting into it, that don't really have like a community that they interact with or something. Maybe it's a way for them to share and I don't know, find more information, be more engaged. Maybe that's a possibility. But yeah, for me personally, I've never really used a set registry and probably won't use the beta. At this point, I don't really share a lot of the stuff that I buy outside of the few mentions I do in the MMR. I really don't share majority of what I'm buying anyway, what I have at this point. So yeah, maybe it's just more a me issue, but in general, that's my position. Aaron says, hey Scott, thoughts on SM210? Oh, stained glass bird trio's value long term. Glad you said the name because I do not know all the promo numbers by heart. Yeah, I think it's a good card. I actually bought some of them a while back. I bought those and the Ho-Oh from Shining Legends. Bird's a little more expensive, the trio. Unique art, unique concept. Yeah, I think it's good. I don't think it's like a huge, like, under optimized, like buy now type of thing. But yeah, I think it's a good card. And I personally bought a few of them a couple months ago. Sam says, as far as I know, I'm currently able to send to PSA through PSA Japan. They've opened a branch here a couple years back, and it's more like a middleman. As a result, I've noticed more graded cards on Mercari and some more in shops. Till now, grading in Japan has been non-existent. I feel this trend says something about the possibility of Japan eating up some of the market excess in the future. I'm curious if you feel that Japan can consume enough to offset the increase in slabs, or will it just be a drop in the bucket? Japanese collectors, what is this? Japanese collectors are voracious with what they love. That's the word of the Q&A right there. My guess is Japanese cards will also proliferate in slabs more heavily in the near future. I'm expecting a spike of Japanese vintage slabs in the next few years, assuming the market grows steadily. Just curious on your thoughts. Thanks as always. Love hearing it. Pidgey. Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity in Japan because a quick rundown of Japan is they have their own market. Like there's definitely crossover, but for example, I sell stuff, like I've sold some graded stuff recently that is below some of the buy lists in Japan. So they have their own thing going on over there. And I think there's a lot of potential. Some of the like insider scoop from PSA is they were targeting Japan a long time ago. I remember talking to Joe Orlando about how baseball's big over there, so naturally they probably would want to collect or whatever, and this is a way to get in to that market. So yeah, I agree. I think there is definitely a good sized demand there that could still be filled. I think you see more of the serious like people in it where you don't have like the casual rush that you do over here in the US. At least I feel like everybody and their dog now grades cards, where in Japan I think it still isolates like the really serious like 5+ year people that have been doing it a long time. So it hasn't become like a mainstream thing. I think that's the general distinction. So yeah, I agree with your observation. TJR17 says, "Hey Scott, I recently purchased a sealed 2002 Japanese theater limited deck after seeing just how good the artwork is. I did so with the intent of cracking it, grading them, hopes for 9s and 10s. Look at the pop reports, over 50% of the pop is 10, with another 20 being 9s. Those numbers accurately reflect how easy these cards straight out of pack should be to grade? Yes. Or are there known issues with them? I'd like to risk cracking it for my odds of 9 and 10 are quite high. I can only see the front of the Latios and Latias. Also, what other cards would you recommend grading from the deck? Appreciate being able to pick a brain each month. Tyson." Honestly, I just grade all of them. Top ones are definitely Latios, Latias, Politoed. Yeah, Politoed. Like, if you look at that Politoed art from 5th, it's not going to be like a Charizard or Pikachu liquid card, but it's definitely a standout art. Overall, I think the art's great because it's all exclusive. I've sold multiple copies of all of those cards in that deck over the years. And if anything, I'm really reluctant to sell them because I don't buy them as regularly as I do. So my prices are probably higher than market. So yeah, overall, I grade most of them. And yeah, I don't know any significant consistent problems. You might get the unlucky like tight plastic or something that might somehow damage the couple of cards, but overall I don't know any strong like Masaki type trend or anything like that in relation to the 5th deck. Cousin Vidi, praise to the almighty thumbnail master. That's actually Shizzle from E4. This is Z.I. Leets. Okay, please appreciate the pronunciation. Oh, I recognize that name from E4. There we go. I see the X-I. I'm gonna see, how do I pronounce that in my mind? Xyleets, maybe? I think, yeah, Xyleets, that's how I do it in my mind. Anyway, overall, isn't a pop report beneficial to the market because it helps to optimize it? If collectors and investors know how much of something that is out there, that should be a good thing because it takes some of the guesswork out of knowing the value of rare items. Yes, thanks as always for the nuggets. 5,000 Poké Dollars a pop. Yeah, so you're right. Pop report is honestly an invaluable tool. It's an invaluable collection of information. I mean, people really sleep on how much access they have in Pokemon to data. And, you know, there may be a day where some of that changes. I have no company has said that to me outright, but, you know, you already see it where PSA is blocking a lot of the automated scraping that these super big brain programmers do, where they're trying to collect all that data automatically. Companies are becoming more aware of data, and a pop report is extremely valuable. Now, there are certain, you know, like when you're saying, is it beneficial? It is beneficial to the consumer. And kind of tying in a question earlier, why I don't use set registries and things like that, is because I don't really want people knowing what I have. And again, this might be an argument from exception. I'm not a normal player in the game, but, you know, I have like 5 or 6 copies of some cards that most people won't ever get one copy of. So I don't want to publicize that. You know, I don't want to have that out there in writing and say, oh, I own like 50% of this card or whatever. And, you know, that's where it gets a little bit murky. But the great thing about the pop report is it is anonymous. And the only thing I could add there is you got to take it with a grain of salt. You know, there's always context to data. Data is just one part. Data is just a data point at the end of the day. It's just one part of the equation. You know, even cards that have even considerably low pops, some of them, like a University Magic card comes to mind. I know at least 7 grades in there that are just nonsense. Like, they don't exist. Like, they're someone who regraded it that didn't send back in the label. So that's really the only thing you have to look at for accuracy. But overall, yeah, it's a huge, invaluable resource. Like, you cannot overstate how valuable the pop is. Chris says, hey Scott, I took your advice. I left my job and begun my journey in professional cat sitting. I knew it was coming. When I saw I left my job, I knew it was going to be a meme. What with the recent price corrections in the market, I can now finally afford the cards I dreamed about. I don't have a question. This is just an appreciation message. The breadth of knowledge and insight you gave is unparalleled. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone here when I say thank you for all I do. Well, I appreciate it, Chris. The YouTube metrics aren't as big as the open mouth YouTubers, but those comments make it all worthwhile. Roy says, hey Scott, thanks for everything. What do you think about the availability of Japanese products in the last year and near future? In terms of availability and second market prices, we all feel what is happening in Japan. Every product runs out of stock as soon as it comes out. Every new product Pokemon Center goes in the lottery. And most worrying of all, products that get an exorbitant price on eBay before they go out. Keep that price after they're out. For example, Kanazawa box and the Eevee Hero Special box, the price is now about $500. And that's the price it was a month before they officially came out. What does that say about products of 25th. Does the golden box really stay at 800? Thanks again, and keep the cocoa juice. Very good question, Roy. It's been asked in some form or another by other people because it's a constant discussion topic. And number one, pre-order, I talked about this earlier, pre-orders are pre-optimized, like you highlighted. They're pre-optimized for cards and items even hit the shelf. So you have stuff like the Kanazawa box or the Evolutions Espeon box that are truly limited items. On the other side, you have things like the Nagaba Pikachu, which I bought like 100 of. That's something where the pre-order price was higher than the current market price. And I remember saying that in another Q&A, or maybe, yeah, I think it was a Q&A, and I was explaining how I think these cards that have these really limited, like esoteric releases are going to be the ones that will probably maintain their pre-order or maybe go higher or whatever. But the ones where it's like, okay, you get this with a purchase or the ease to entry is there, those have a higher chance of being lower. Ultimately, I still think patience is a virtue, because if you look at these boxes, I remember at the time with the EV Heroes situation, I was just like, I'm just going to smooth back and chill out. And here we are today. I remember saying, even if the price stays the same or goes up a little bit after 5 months or 6 months or whatever of you just relaxing, that's not a crazy scenario. Paying the same price, now you have confidence that that's what it's really going for, or it went up a bit, which is still confidence that that's what it's going for. And in this time, you just let the market solidify and made a better purchase, in my opinion. You have more data to go off of. But yeah, you're hitting on the head what the Japanese market is right now in a nutshell. I don't see that changing in the short term. 20th anniversary is going to be a monster unless they print more product, which still waiting to hear that. Still waiting for the EV Heroes reprint, by the way. Still waiting for that to be a thing. So yeah, that's my general overview on the whole Japan situation. Next up, Alex says, hey Scott, and thank you for all the videos and valuable information you provide. From what I can remember, you do enjoy and appreciate the card assets. From an investing standpoint, do you think both 96 and 7 sets are a viable option? Do you have personal preference between the two? Much appreciated. I personally love the it's back here behind the Sonic and Tails plush, the 1997 card asset that has all Sugimori art for a number of reasons. Number one, it's here. We got a little. Why is this little Rapidash just sitting here? Clean up this office. I have a Rapidash just sitting here. I don't know why. So this is the one I'm referring to. This one is all exclusive, original Sugimori art. It's like the oasis of that early watercolor Sugimori design. Like, there's so many layers I could go through. Yeah, like the Charmander Spike, like the Pikachu White Belly, like all these like early phase Pokemon concepts in one set. Beautiful. It works together. The checklists are phenomenal. I mean, it's, as far as collecting is concerned, artwork and exclusivity and history, they're just maxed out. So that one is my favorite above all the other non-TCG sets. Like, it's a huge, huge favorite. And I don't buy a ton of it, like, as far as like investing is concerned. I'm speaking strictly from like collecting, emotional, perhaps fundamentals of why people collect it. But yeah, it's just head and shoulders above any other non-TCG set, in my opinion. It just completely obliterates the competition. Seawag says, hey Scott, do you think 25th anniversary gold box will be on the same tier as the Master Battle set, even with gold promos being released in English? Good question, Seawags. It's something I thought of myself. I kind of associate all these together, like Rocket, I associate with Master Battle Collection, and also with the gold. The gold one is kind of weird to me. What I like about Master Battle and Rocket is good identity, unique cards, like unique art. Pikachu one feels a little bit more gimmicky. I know it's a risky, subjective claim, but it just feels like that. Like, I don't get the same, like, maybe it's just me and a bias, but I don't get that same exact vibe. And for whatever that's worth, maybe the market doesn't care. It's like, okay, it's gold, Pikachu, rare, whatever, buy it. Like, that might be a lot of people. Overall, I think it's fine. I think it's a good release, but I'm just trying to isolate that there's more to the Master Battle and Rocket, in my opinion, but I do see it in a similar vein. And similar to the Eevee Heroes and Kanazawa box as well. It's in a similar vein as those, but I feel like Rocket and Master Battle are just doing a little bit more, at least for me. Robert S. says, Scotty, my boy, what can I get? When can I get a set of those crystal balls? How long do you normally hold inventory for turning around for sale? Thanks for what you do, great content. It depends. Typically, this is my typical SM Pratt advice, is things you can buy frequently. I tend to sell frequently. Things I can buy less frequently, I tend to sell less frequently. That's really the general answer for what I do. Of course, there's exceptions. If someone comes to me with a huge high dollar offer on a high end card, yeah, I'll typically take it because typically I have multiples of them, and then I can take that capital, either buy another collecting goal I want, put it into inventory, do whatever I want with it. So yeah, in general, that's my rule. My S&M Pratt law is like things I could buy more frequently, I typically sell more frequently. Things I could buy less frequently, I typically sell less frequently. Natty One Mill says, "Hey Scott, interested to know if you look back on your career in the hobby, do you notice a tipping point in terms of success and collection goals and ROI? At what point did it happen? And has there ever been a moment of shock or surprise, the amount of momentum you have been able to generate in this hobby? Thanks a bunch for inspiring, giving so many collectors in the hobby. Keep up the good work." This has been a really complimentary Q&A. So yeah, there's definitely turning points for sure. Like 2011 was a big year for me collecting wise. I hit some major milestones. That's when I bought my first Illustrator. I bought a ton. I remember my collection thread on E4 was just like one banger after another. Like I was in the zone in 2011. Like a lot of things happened. Graduated college, just a lot of stars collided. Went to Europe. Like a lot of things were going on in 2011. It was a big year. And then the one turning point when you talk about like ROI and when business really started to take off, I would say selling the first few illustrators I did, those were definitely bigger moments. 2016 was a lot of fun. I started doing things like YouTube and really growing other branches within S&M Pratt and evolving. And of course 2020 was ridiculous I think for everybody. Anyone who could sell anything from home, I think they had a crazy year in 2020. And now I'm at a point where, things that I just did for fun, like YouTube, like Patreon and other things, create revenue for me in a way that I never really planned for. So a lot of it is just kind of keeping on. Like that's really what it is. I do something, I usually don't like celebrate that long. I just move on to the next one. So yeah, there's been a lot over the years. There's a lot of smaller sales or moments or things. There's some big deals I did within the past 4 years. I think definitely were life changing or more monumental or push me in a certain direction. But yeah, I could go on like for a whole hour long podcast about every experience. But yeah, there's definitely, those are some of the ones that some general points come to mind. Ricky Bobby says, "Hope all is well, S&P. You always talk about AP ratio and for a good reason. Talk about cost of raw versus graded. Completely agree. I do, however, see a few instances, mainly in modern, SV49 is a good example, where the graded prices have dropped for a while and yet raw really have not followed. Cases where people price raw are sometimes above established PS8, sometimes 9 prices. It makes no sense to me to ever buy raw for PS9 prices if it may grade at 10. Seems risky, isn't worth it, and would be a losing long-term strategy. I'm missing something. PS, I will not stop mentioning a Shiny Psyduck card until they make one." Yeah, Shiny Psyduck is so good. So yeah, I 100% agree. Like I would not want to go out there and throw my old rod into the water to get a potential 10 when you can get the 9 in the hand. I would not take that deal. I would just take the 9 in the hand and call it a day. If it's cheaper than the raw, to me that makes no sense. That makes no sense. Like I never, even WotC stuff or whatever it is, I will never go in and think I'm going to get a 10 and I'm going to pay above a 9 price to do that. I would never do that. Like it's just not worth it. Unless the ratios are so much, they'd have to be so much tighter. Like with a PSA 9 First Edition Charizard, for example, it's like if I'm paying like, let's say 50 grand for a potential 10, there's no way. I wouldn't even take that deal. I'll just take the 9 and call it a day. Like I do not want to gamble that much capital for such a low risk potential. And maybe part of that's because my eyes are already going to tell me that it's not going to get a 10. Like it would have to be such a clear, like I can already, like just running this hypothetical through my mind, there's just no way I would take that deal. There's no way. So anyway, yeah, I completely agree. I don't think the AP ratio is off for a lot of the modern stuff. If I were collecting that just as a collector, not investing, yeah, then already graded 9s rates would be perfect. Especially if you just want to do a binder or whatever. You're getting literal certified mint or near mint to mint cards for less than a raw copy. Like, yeah, that's, to me, it just screams value. Doesn't mean make a ton of money. It does just scream value though. Mert says, "Hey Scott, I'm saving for an engagement wedding ring, future kids right now, so unfortunately not being able to purchase as much as I'd like, but I've been buying random booster boxes at Target and modern binder cards I like for like 2 shipped every once in a while and still having fun and feeling engaged in the hobby. Have you ever went through a similar time where funds are limited, and if So how did you stay engaged? Thanks. Yeah, really good question, Mertz. I think it's what a lot of us do as we get older. We start to think about the other parts of our life, like the things outside of our binders. Yeah, it's a constant process. There's times when I don't, well, I'll spend tens of thousands of dollars a month, and there's times when I spend a couple $100, a month on Pokemon. It just all depends. For me, it's different because I have a business. I buy inventory pretty regularly. But as far as personal stuff is concerned, some of the most fun I've had collecting was doing like a vending binder, or the Komiya binder was a lot of fun. I don't. My average cost per card was maybe like what you said, $1 or $2 at most. Like some of those cards are like 10 cents or 20 cents, like commons, uncommons. So that was a lot of fun. It was great getting all those cards with Troll Toad. Fun picking them all out, arriving, putting them in the binders. It's so much fun. Just even talking about it increases the heart rate. So yeah, it's something that I think we all do, big or small. There's moments of swelling and contracting, and yeah, it's something that we all go through, and the numbers are all relative. Maybe for some people, $100 a month is a big month, and what it was for me. Like I've been through all these phases myself. I remember when $100 was a ton of money a month. Like that was a lot when I was in college, and now it's different ratios, but it's still the same thing. It's still the same pattern. So yeah, we all do that. And again, like the Komiya binder is one that comes to mind. It was so much fun, and average cost maybe $1 or $2 per card. PB Magnet says, if there was a documentary about the 2020 to 2021 car market, what are some elements that you'd like to see explored? What would some of the key story threads that would be worth unraveling? Or are you trying to do a little documentary here? People have actually reached out about it. I think the main one I'd explore is how collectibles are a medium that is here to stay, that people truly enjoy. Even me just organically responding to Mertz's question about, what do I do when funds are tight, or I'm just not feeling it or whatever. It's like my heart just starts talking. I'm like, yeah, that Komiya binder is so much fun. I couldn't care less what that binder's worth, and I think that's the thing is like collecting and collectibles have become a generational experience, kind of like video games. It reminds me a lot of how when video games emerged, all those old like dinosaurs, like pre-boomers, were like, oh yeah, video games horrible, devil, horrible influence. Yep, it's gonna make them be violent and stuff. It's like that was a whole thing. That was a whole thing. Mortal Kombat. I remember the controversy with all that. Video games were like pooped on by the previous generation, and look at them now. Like look at where video games are now. So I think collectibles are in the same vein. I think that'd be the main artery of a documentary, especially for the past year or so, to really just highlight, use all the big names, all the synergy now in the market, and just talk about how like this is just a thing that this generation enjoys because it was our experience. I can't not look at those games and think about my experience with them. Where like someone who's like in their 50s, outside of the Garys of the world, my parents look at those games, they don't have that reaction because it wasn't their thing. So yeah, I think that's really the main thing I'd explore. And there's so many avenues now to do that. So many content creators and experts, or whatever you want to say, that you can talk to now that will give you great information and great story for how collectibles are just a part of our world. I think they're some of the best. This is maybe a risky statement, but I really believe it. I think they're some of the best consumable items you can buy. Forget about making money. Just in the context of majority of them just hold some type of value. When you think about going to a party, going to the club, going to whatever it is, Lollapalooza, even buying food, whatever thing it is, a lot of the consumer things you'll do disappear in $0 immediately. I'm not saying they're worthless. I'm not saying you shouldn't do them. I'm just trying to highlight that like collectibles have this unique blend of like experience, community, actual monetary value. They really bring in a lot of things, and maybe you should just Control C, Control V that answer for the documentary. But there it is. Yeah, that's what I would say. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. Mud MUHD says, hey Aston Pratt, I was browsing through Bulbapedia, just looking at cards, and I stumbled upon the 2000 Lucky Stadiums. Also look at the pop, and there's some with PSA 9 as double of 10. Are they hard to grade, and what are your thoughts on these cards? Also, the special Lucky Stadium Tropical Mega Battle has pop 12. It's rarest of them all. Thank you for, or is it the rarest of them all? Thank you for all you do, and I can't stop laughing at your YouTube thumbnail picture. Yeah, I'm glad the thumbnails are appreciated. They definitely add another layer. Yeah, so as for Lucky Stadiums, I think I put them in, what MMR was that? I put them in underrated for one of the MMRs somewhat recently. because I think they are really cool. It's a nice little mini set. Old back, golden era, unique art. I think they have a lot going on. Not extremely rare outside the TMB one you mentioned. Yes, that one is insanely rare. It was only given out at the Tropical Megabat tournament in 2000. But yeah, overall they're good. I like the theme of them. If you really want to be crazy, you can do all 9 in a binder with the TMB in there. There's also one in the Total Chikorita deck. I think it's Imakuni. I think there might be 2 of them actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, those are the 8 promos. And overall, yeah, they're not super hard to grade, but they're not easy guaranteed 10s either. You know, they're somewhere in between those 2 points. As the pop reflects. Brian says, hey Scott, I now walk around my house drinking coconut water. My wife asks why, and I say LeBron James Pokemon drinks it. Drink like Scott, think like Scott. Anyway, I get the impression that groupthink is more significant than we think. Seems to me that the interest in the hobby has not fallen one bit, yet prices did. I theorize collectively everyone is waiting for the PSA avalanche causing price drops to start splashing around. But if everyone does it all at once, it's going to cause a surge that's going to confuse everyone. More cards, higher prices. The hobby is very intelligent with so much content and experts spreading info that I think the community is sitting in the grass like a lion waiting to pounce. What do you think? Yeah, overall it's tough because basically what you're highlighting is a category of the market. So like I just got done doing another monthly round of auctions and I can go through and see the cards that have come down and some of them that have held and some that have even gone up. Like my CP6 boxes sold higher than the previous month's CP6 boxes, which were much higher than my previous CP6 box sales. So, you know, you really have to go through and figure out which item does what. But yeah, overall, the more common accessible things are definitely going to have more common accessible trends. You know, they're going to have more people competing, more people saturating, more people buying, selling, doing whatever. So that's why you have a higher saturation. You know, some of the Japanese base stuff that I sold 2020 is now about half of what it was back then, but it's also still up like who knows how much since I originally bought it. So yeah, I don't know how to phrase it overall. Like, yeah, I do agree there's people waiting to pounce. There's plenty of money in markets all the time. The only danger I would say is when people overgeneralize and say it's all this or it's all that. Those are the type of people who are going to fail and probably miss a lot of opportunity. So yeah, I do definitely feel and always move with the tide, and when things move and when overall certain set cards or whatever cards are going down to have more supply. But yeah, overall, I think the market is more than healthy. I think prices don't necessarily reflect the health of the market. I think it reflects more the supply and demand of the current market situation, especially for those certain products. I don't really think it fully reflects the entire health of the collectible market. Next up, Jake says, Raspberry Pi. Hey Scott, I have 2 questions this month. With the huge popularity boom in Pokemon, I basically stopped looking at WotC holos, both English and Japanese. However, with the market cooldown, I've turned some of my attention back to WotC, specifically 9 Japanese holos. When looking at 96 base, it's right on cue. I found many of the PSA 9 holos besides the Starter Trio to be sub 100. However, the 10s for some of the cards, anywhere from 400 to 600. Has the gap always been this large between 9 and 10s for Japanese base? I just can't wrap my head around why a PSA 9 Gyarados goes for $90 and the 10 goes for $500. Let me know if I'm missing something. Also, when looking at the 2004 Tropical Wind Pop, I noticed there's the normal Tropical Wind and Tropical Wind no stamp variant. Is there a difference between these two, or are they basically the same cards, same release? Thanks, Jake. Yeah, that one is just the PSA gods deciding arbitrarily what label to use. As for your question, yeah, I absolutely agree. It's a great example of AP ratio. The 9 definitely screams value, in my opinion, in that context. Sub $100 for a PSA 9 holo card that's 25 years old from the first Pokemon set released. I don't know what else do you need to say? I mean, what else do you need to say? Like, it's just a good value. Like, do I think it's going to stonk? I have no idea. Do I think you're going to double, triple, or make any money at all? Couldn't care less. But that is a crazy value, especially when you have the data of comparing it to a 10. Yeah, it's just, you're right on the nose. I completely agree. And yeah, the thing you were saying about turning back to WotC is funny because the previous question from Brian talking about how Japanese base in particular has come down from 2020. And it's like, here you go. Great value buy opportunity right now. And I don't see that changing in the short term. Stefan says, howdy Scott, I was wondering if you could shed some light on the sample set cards. It's hard to find information on them. It doesn't seem like they're ever come for sale and incredibly scarce. Does anyone care that much about them? Yeah, so the sample cards are pretty rare. They came out, it's tough to know because they shouldn't exist, number one. They're actually one of the more interesting English cards, which is a very rare statement. They were printed illegally to showcase the technology at the time. Japanese back on an English card with the word sample at the bottom. There was a full sheet print of them. So whatever that is, 90, 120, whatever the sheet was back then. Full sheet print of each card. That doesn't include maybe extra copies from staff. But yeah, you're talking very, very low numbers. Maybe low hundreds at most. Very, very low quantity. And they are historic. Like they were to showcase that time where you would swipe the card, there'd be data on the card. That was big technology back then. Still actually cool idea. So yeah, that is the sample set. It is hard to find. It flies under the radar. It might be plagued with being too rare for its own good. I think it might be in that category where you don't see enough sales data on it and enough like media on it because it flies under the radar. So anyway, that's a fun set, rare set, and that's pretty much the general breakdown on it. Okay, I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm gonna absolutely butcher this name, so I'm not even gonna say it. Mundinglaya. Mundalaya, is that it? Hello, Scott from Indonesia, the largest coconut producing country in the world. I didn't know that. I wonder where these are made. Where are these coconuts from? Where they probably from like down the street or something. What are the ultra modern Pokemon cards printed 2007 onward, basically Sun and Moon onwards, that you like best for medium term holding, let's say until 30th anniversary, and why? It's very specific, predict the future question, but yeah, I mean, just Hyper Rare Charizard comes to mind. Just the best fundamental options out there. Hyper Rare Charizard is probably a strong one. Of course, the price is up now because it's it's already proven itself. But yeah, stuff like that. Charizard, I guess. I mean, if you're talking 5 years, I can't imagine, unless this stuff gets printed into the ground. Maybe some of the arts and things like that will do well over time. Maybe their Quaz one will do well over time. Remains to be seen. The problem with this type of question is that a lot of this stuff is still in production and also getting more and more prints. So, for example, if you asked about Hidden Fates Charizard, solid card in my opinion, in the context of it being modern. If you ask about Hidden Fates Charizard when it dropped, it's like, oh, okay, Hidden Fates is kind of rare. It's not always available, whatever. Where now it's like, oh yeah, they had like how many revolving door re-releases prints of Hidden Fates now. So that's the risky run with modern, but even evolution stuff is still higher today than it was at release from 5 years later. Burndo says, greetings, Scots. In the first ever Q&A, I asked about waifu cards and you said it wasn't your thing, and it still isn't. Fair enough, but they stonked a lot since, so did first edition Jungle Eevees for a short time. Do you ever actively engage with trends in the market you strongly disagree with, but you foresee them happening anyway, like selling to the greater fool? How much do you speculate upon trends sustaining, maybe by sending affected cards off 12-month creating journeys and not selling inventory you already have? Do you have examples? Okay, I kind of see what you're saying. So yeah, I typically don't tend to sell into trends that much because I don't have time to keep up with all of them. Even the Jungle Eevee one, I don't know if I had many on hand. At that time, it's like I had so many sales I remember posting my last quarter of 2020. It was insane. Like when I looked at the total sales for that quarter, it was like almost $1 million just on eBay. It was insane. And I remember just being like, how did I survive this? Like it was so much work. Anyway, my point is that like I definitely sold some first edition base stuff at a great price. But in hindsight, I could have made like an extra $100,000 easily. I have plenty more of that inventory, and it would have sold much better at that time. But I was reluctant. I'm like, okay, I don't want to. This person wants, these are going for $4,000. This guy wants it for $3,500, and now that card's selling for maybe 15 or 2. And I could have obviously made more money if I sold all of them at $3,500. But I don't operate that way. And yeah, I might miss some short-term opportunity. But the other side of that coin is when you get into that mindset, I think you end up slipping up more than you realize. Like, yeah, great. You hit that home run, great. But there's a lot more people who are in the other side of that where it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make that money now. And then they're like, crap, I ended up selling Trophy Kangaskhan for $5,000, or something like that. So anyway, yeah, I'm definitely long-term, slow and steady. So I missed a lot of the waves. 2020, I just naturally caught some of them because I had so much stuff listed and just a monsoon of demand. I'll never understand waifu cards. Don't want to understand waifu cards. Just keep it private, guys. That's all I gotta say. Just keep it to yourself. I don't want to just keep it in your binder. Keep it at home. Like, I don't want to know, don't want to ask. Just don't. Like, waifus are like a living meme. It just blows my mind. All right, moving along. KG says, "Hey Scott, you've given thoughts on the PSA versus CGC BGS many times over, but I have a bit more pointed question. The premium that PSA tends to carry versus 9.5s of the others has been discussed a lot. Do you notice a major premium or maybe more important, significantly higher liquidity in PSA 9 versus CGC 9s? Maybe you can't comment as much on liquidity as you're not selling many, if any, CGC cards, but if you've heard from others, it would be great to hear the input on the premium and liquidity. I've taken to a strategy of grading with CGC when I know I don't have a chance at PSA 10 for the ability to actually churn inventory, but saving on any possible 10s for PSA as more of medium long-term hold when the card won't go in my PC. Thoughts? Thanks as always for your insight. I hope you have a great summer." Yeah, that's a pretty good question, KG. And kind of tying in Burndos's question, I'm simply in slow and steady, so I don't need liquidity is not really an issue for me. Like even this last auction block, I just peppered in some of my own cards from inventory. I literally just go through inventory within 15 minutes to take that, and I have an auction block. I just do not, because I've been doing this so long, I don't go through with that much strategy at this point. Like the strategy is already on the front end from like years, if that makes sense. It's already happened a long time ago. So at this point, it's just more about processing, which I need to do a better job of, honestly, if we're being honest here. But anyway, as for your question, why I only do PSAs because I don't need anything else for me personally. I don't need PSA gets the biggest premium. As for your question about liquidity, I don't doubt that forget about all the big companies. Let's do hole in the wall like Scumbag Pratt grading company. I don't doubt that you could auction that off and it would sell for a liquid price. The key focus here is what does it earn? So in that scenario, PSA 9 versus CGC, yeah, PSA 9 all day. Even if you pull the exception argument of like this one actually did this versus this, when you look at volume data, it's PSA 9 like head and shoulders above every other company, which makes sense. It's the natural, obvious answer. Market inertia, grade the most Pokemon cards. Most people want to have the same, continuity of PSA whatever set or whatever it is. Tying in other questions about the set registry and things like that. That's stuff that's been happening for 2+ decades now, before even CGC existed in trading cards, before Beckett was even doing anything outside, the main obvious Pokemon stuff. So yeah, that's why, PSAs, until another company proves themselves where they can consistently earn a premium as a standard, not just their one label at the top, as a standard across the board, I have no reason to grade with an inferior option. It just doesn't work for me. Now, I'm not denying that there's certain niches out there, like if you want an air designation or whatever thing it is. I'm not those like Beckett and CGC. I think that's really their wheelhouse. But overall, yeah, the 9.5 is never going to be the 10. It's that simple. Decimal points. I don't know what the psychology is behind it, but when I look at it, I'm just like, no. Like I don't want anything to do with it. I'd rather have an 8 than an 8.5. Like that's how much I hate decimal points. So anyway, yeah, it'll never be the same. It's inherently a different grading scale. And yeah, overall, PSA 9 both of them are going to give you pretty similar liquidity, but I think PSA anything, I think is going to be the best outside of the exceptional top labels that PSA doesn't offer. In general, the answer is PSA. Arvin says, "Hey Scott, I'm holding 2 cases of Shining Star V with the first print stamp on them. I was wondering if the first print stamp will demand a higher premium in the future like it does now. How much more premium do you really think the first print stamp commands for collectors?" Yeah, that's an interesting one. People have asked about that before. It's really hard to project on that because it's so unique. You don't get that often. You don't get this. I don't know why they did that either with Shiny V. It was just out of nowhere they decided to do that. But the problem is the cards aren't any different. It's really just the box for sealed collectors. Like that's really it. There's nothing. If there was something different with the cards, then I think I would be like, oh yeah, that's solid. Where this one, it's one that if it does hold a premium, okay, but I don't really know outside the box, what's going on that's unique. And again, it feels impulsive. It doesn't feel like it was a pointed or consistent thing, as they don't do it that often. So yeah, that's a wait to be seen answer. For me, if the cards were significantly different, that would do more for me personally, and I'd be more confident and be like, yeah, that's gonna be crazy. But yeah, I mean, there's no harm in sitting on those cases. You got 2 cases of first print. If you even the base regular Shiny V, which I think most people just think of overall. A lot of people don't really care about the designation. Shiny V is already more than fine. So yeah, you're definitely fine just holding on to them. Barrett says, what's up, Barrett? Hey, Scott, as a new collector, just started at the beginning of last year. I feel often overwhelmed by the huge amount of beautiful cards which come out over the years. Love to look through different sets of Poke Collector and discover new chase cards and new favorites just to look at, often just out of the artist's point of view. Certainly I can't buy them all, but adore the art. Is there a book who lists all cards of different sets which came out over the years, or anything else which I could hold in my hand to get cozy on my couch? Or is it just digital? As always, hope you're doing well. Stay happy and healthy and feed us your wisdom. Much love, Postcard Girl Barrett. I'm looking around. I don't think I have the Bible in here. It's not in here. It must be out in the grandma family room. So the Silver Bible, which I had no idea that was going to blow up after I made that video. I remember doing a video on like more affordable options in contrast to all the drama at the time, and that Silver Bible is the answer basically to what you want, but it stops at $19.99. So it's basically the first 3 years of Pokemon, every single card, and they've been approached, Pokemon's been approached, they just need a proof of concept, which I don't know how you could do that. Maybe now, because the price is so high on those books, you could be like, hey, do it now. But yeah, it'd have to be broken down to volumes now, because there's too many cards. But yeah, the $19.99, it's called the Bible. I think the actual title is Official Collector's Book. It's like a silver book, goes now for a few $100s on eBay. That's your answer. It's got everything from $96 to $19.99. You'll probably find some new cards in there, actually. If not, you'll see like interesting memorabilia, tournament information, the Game Boy promos that were never released are in there. You know, it's just a great piece of history if you don't have it already. But yeah, that's really the only official book that I could think of with everything from a certain era. By the way, hope your postcards are doing well. Max says, hey Scott, I've got a very Marco one for you this month. Sports are an ingrained mainstream in society, but our hobby is based on the popularity of brand created by a media franchise. This introduces the risks of trends and accompanying boom and bust potential. See Beanie Babies. Fortunately, Pokemon is an extremely well-run company who seem to really care and manage the brand well. That being said, what's your advice to all his patrons, the best ambassadors for the brand to help support the investment and collecting community in the future? Thanks for always for the entertaining content. It's kind of like the question earlier, I think, who asked, was it PB Magnet or somebody asked about the documentary, like what I would say. And it's similar to that, where it's just like, this is our experience and we just like it. Like, that's really what it is. Sports are the exact same. The thing people fail to see with sports is that it's the fiction within the reality that matters. It's not the real, like Gretzky's lore of him achieving what he did. It's the feelings from that, which are fiction. Like, my feelings and adoration for Gretzky are not tangibly there in the world. It's within me. Like, when I project onto like the Gretzky Blues piece of memorabilia I have here off camera, that's me projecting my narration and my feelings or whatever, just like you would onto the Game Boy. You know, that game is real. Just like Gretzky scoring goals. Those are both parallel. They both really exist. But like that same process of like your narration and experience with the game or with Gretzky, it's the same exact thing. And why it works with something like Pokemon and why it also works with sports is because both of those have great fundamentals. Hockey is a challenging sport. Pretty much every mainstream sport is a challenging sport. It's not easy just to go in there, strap on skates, and do what even the average NHLer does or the average college player does. Just like it's not easy to go into Pokemon and just blaze through it. You know, you got to learn, you got to grow, etc. So there's a lot of parallels there. In fact, there's more parallels than there are differences. So yeah, I think overall, it's just something within that idea or that feeling that, you know, it's our experiences that really solidify all this stuff, that solidify these markets, whether it's sports that are real. And, you know, something like Beanie Babies, the thing that people miss with Beanie Babies is that it didn't have anything. There was nothing there. Like, I have the Beanie Baby here, and I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that one, or I remember that feeling. That was kind of fun. But there's nothing deeper beyond that. It's just like, yeah, that was fun at the time to have that, like to go to McDonald's and buy this because everyone else was buying it. Well, with Pokemon, it was really intimate. Just like with sports, there's an intimacy there. There's depth to it. There's like a continuation, engagement. So anyway, I don't know what to do outside of branding. You know, maybe just more of an understanding, which I think more people have today. But yeah, overall, just don't be too edgy. Like, one of the things I just saw a video from like a video game speedrunner guy, like I don't like the whole white knight drama, expose fraud stuff. That stuff to me is two steps backwards. When people say man child, grandma basement or whatever, those type of things validate those statements. And I've been fighting that uphill battle for years. So that's maybe the only thing I could isolate that I cannot stand, that I think does nothing to improve the perception of the hobby. If anything, all it does is 100% verify those negative stereotypes about nerds or whatever, those negative comments about being man children, etc. That's the only thing that I'd use as a counterexample. People who are just like, all the people I talk to in Patreon, all the calls I do, it's like normal people. You name the occupation, I've seen it. You name the part of the globe, I've talked to them. So that's more, that whole thing, whatever that is like the good part of it. And just, I guess, normalizing it and having a better understanding how it's more connected. And it's just part of the whole human experience that we all are sharing or, processing all the time. So anyway, I don't know if you wanted that full-on answer, but there it is. That's what I have. Mike says, hey, Scott, what are your overall thoughts on the Festa cards? They seem like great cards, but not sure on the rarity. Yeah, they're good. I've talked about Festa a little bit before in the past, typically when I sell a few of them. They're kind of a nice mini set, like 2014, 15, 16, 17. And each one has its own set of challenges. Like 14 is the first one, 16 is the harder one to find, it's more scarce, also 20th anniversary. Yeah, they're just good. They're nice. They're not like huge bangers or whatever, but I think they're decent cards, and I have plenty of them. So yeah, really tough to criticize. Next up, Discal says, Sub SM Pratt. Lately, I've been looking at a bit more of the release of the stamp promos. It seems like 100K boxes will be made. I can think of certain cards from other TCGs with similar numbers. They're still not crazy expensive even 20 years after release. However, the demand of Pokemon's insane, so I'm not as sure what the promos will be as abundant. Do we have any data for Pokemon previous releases with similar numbers? Also, it seems like the boxes will be released in 3 waves, starting from the 25th of August to mid-September. If you had to take an educated guess, do you think peak availability during mid and September might be the best time to pick them up? I'd say just be patient in general. Rather than trying to perfectly time the market, I'm not someone who's going to buy a ton of these right out of the gate. Even with the Nagaba Pikachus, I bought a few of those early on. Wasn't sure if I'd get some through my purchase on Pokemon Center. Pleasantly surprised I did. And then later on, I bought them. I would say my first purchases were $20 to $25. My latter purchases were sub 20. I think the lowest I got was like 17 by volume, like by 50 or so in a purchase. So my average is maybe considering the free ones, my average is probably around $20 a piece. But my point is, being patient with something with 100,000 boxes, it kind of goes back to the thing earlier where it's like, even if it doesn't go down a ton, at least you have the confidence of waiting and still paying a same or similar price. That's the boat I'm going to be in. I think a lot of the season collectors are going to be in that boat as well. 100,000 is a lot. That's a lot. Consider things like lottery promos at 5,000. Masaki promos, which are not always easy to find, have like lower tens of thousands, like 20,000-ish, somewhere in there, 40,000. 100,000 is a lot. Like, that's based on limited numbers, like getting really close to based on limited. So yeah, if that truly comes out, even for a fraction of that hits the market, I think that's a good chunk of demand. So me personally, I'm just going to wait. And again, worst case scenario is, even if it stays the same or goes up a bit after waiting a few months, at least you have the confidence that that's where it is. It's proven itself. I consider that a win at the end of the day. Precious says, hey Scott, not a serious question, but if you had to paint an entire wall in your grandma's house based on art from a Pokemon card, what art would you pick? Thanks for all the content videos you make, and I hope you have a great day. P.S. Are you a time travel from the future sent to get us all hooked on coconut water? I seriously need to message via Coco. I've no idea how to do that or how that would work, but I should be getting free product at this point. I don't know any other content creator out there who's getting more reaction for coconut water. So as for art, that's a really good one. Probably Southern Island. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Southern Island would be so cool. Like, to have all the art connecting together. Man, that'd be so cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome. To have a mural of Southern Island. I don't know if the problem is, I'm like, okay, if I commission someone to do it, my super perfectionist collector mind's like, well, it's not the correct artist. It's not the right art. I don't know. I'd go down a rabbit hole of being nitpicky, but yeah, that'd be really cool. Southern Island would be awesome. Man, base set Pikachu maybe. There's so many to choose from. The card ass art where all the starters are sitting. where he's like holding all those stars. Man, there's so many to choose from. But yeah, if I had to choose one, probably Southern Island, because you can get like all the art. It's like select all. All right, going into the reserves. Rob says, Shalom, just want to take on one more of my favorite modern promos, Armor Mewtwo. Yeah, that is a nice one. I think the fundamentals of the art are great for this card. First intro of Mewtwo in the first movie. It has the potential to be a hallmark when looking back at this era of Pokemon. I'm wondering your thoughts on current price availability, gradability, and overall opinion on English, Japanese. Thanks for everything. Well, I've got an opinion. Japanese is a pain to grade. I mean, a pain. I don't think I have the... I better not have them in here. Maybe that's them under there. I used to have a deck full, like when you open up an ETB, you know how the bottom part's like whatever you call that, deck case? And I had a full one of those with the Mewtwo's. And I was opening them and I stopped after like 15 or 20 and I'm like, nope, not going to do it. Because half of them had indents. I'm not exaggerating. Like maybe 30% of my grades were 10s. Then we're talking brand new, literally out the wrapper, just arrived at my door from Japan. So yeah, I think they're great cards. I think the art looks great. I think English is tough to grade too, but I know I have much more experience with the Japanese, and the Japanese are a pain to grade. And I think a lot of people realize that. The Pop Report probably spells it out too. So yeah, I agree with what you said. I'm biased because I like Mewtwo. He's one of my favorites, but I think he's a fan favorite. The Armor Mewtwo is a nice added layer, literally and figuratively. Yeah, I can't say enough about how much it ties into the original era. But yeah, gradability is a pain. Not super rare. That's the only thing holding it back. It's not a super rare card, but it's a pain to grade. That little plastic thing they put in there, like, why Pokemon? Why? Why is it in there? So anyway, now it makes the card pretty tough to grade. Kind of like those P promos too. Any card that has a little anything, inclusion like that, it's going to be a risk. Marco says, hey Scott, do you think Pikachu on the Ball promo will ever be released? The UK kids, the futsal one. Yeah, this one's been rumored for a while. This one's been going on longer than like special delivery Charizard rumors. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I remember last I heard is that it was like you had to have a team. Maybe we need to get the E4 squad. We got enough. We could probably put together an actually decent competitive soccer or football team. And futsal especially, I would murder in futsal. Man, if we had a futsal team, I would obliterate in futsal. Love futsal. It was so... My skill set was holding people off the ball and like strong touch, strong on the ball. So I would love futsal. Anyway, this isn't therapy time. That's what you had to do to get the promo is the point. You had to have a team registered or whatever to get this promo. I don't know why they made it so cumbersome. But it wasn't like the Eevee. And there's a guy, I think his name's Stefan. I think he does the thread on E4. And he helped me out. So I'll have to message him. Or next time he messages me. And see if there's been an update on that. But last I heard, you had to like have an actual registered team. So maybe we'd have to do that on E4 to get one of those cards. But yeah, it's another one of those cards we heard about. Special delivery Charizard, just still a rumor. Francisco says, hello Scott, absolutely love your content, second to none. Appreciate that. Join back to your Patreon again just recently. My question is the following. Based on your experiences and knowledge, why do you think that some modern cards are equally expensive, if not more, than some vintage? Even graded vintage cards, for example, the latest Rayquaza VMAX. Alternate art is also almost 1K. I find it baffling. I understand that some of these prices might not be organic, as you mentioned before, but I noticed some of them have managed to stay the same after 6 months. Also, any tips on how to flip Scout more efficiently? Best regards, Scott. You're the GOAT. Thank you this has been a huge complimentary Q&A. So, that's a really good question. It's a great example also how markets aren't binary. So for us, I'm assuming you're around my age somewhere, and we grew up with this stuff, right? Like this is like our thing. Like we really like WotC or whatever it is, Gold Stars or whatever. There's a lot of people who just know modern. It's a lot of kids that have parents that buy this. You know, that's a real thing. That's a real category. Like remember Christmas, even just within my inner circle of family friends, had people ask about the voltage boxes if I could help them find them. You know, so my point is there's a whole market within modern that's just modern. And when you look at something like especially the Rayquaza Alt Art, it's such a rare card, you know, in the context of set cards that you don't need a ton of demand really to get that 1K price. You don't need a ton of buyers, but modern has plenty of them to go around. Also, it's just exciting. It doesn't need to be either or. I think also is something that a lot of people in hobbies really struggle to understand, myself included at times. You know, you can, a great example is like vintage trophy cards. I always use that as a perfect example of like the word also. When I say like, oh, the grade doesn't matter, right, for an illustrator, which is generally true. It just doesn't matter. If you can own any illustrator, that's a home run. If you can own any Honus Wagner, you know, anything of that rarity, that's a home run. However, the word also exists. So if you own the illustrator and it's also, let's say, PSA 9 or whatever, that can add a premium. So I think in the same vein here, like you can have people that collect vintage and also like modern and maybe like this one card or whatever more, you know, because these alt arts are just absolutely stunning. Like there's no way around it. When I see those alt art cards, when I see them, sometimes they stop me in my tracks. Like they'll stop me in my search. I'm just like, man, like even like evolutions. I'm not a big evolution person, but some of those evolution cards, I'm like, this is just stupid. Like it's just so good. It's such a standout. It's what we've always wanted, basically. So anyway, all that conversation, all those points, I think are reasons why you see the disparity there sometimes, because it's not a binary. You know, you can have people that like vintage who also like modern, or people who just like modern, and you know maybe they just want to throw down on this one or two cards that you happen to look up, and also never underestimate the demand for modern. Never underestimate it. We only see the vocal, visible part. We can never see the underground. We can never see the invisible, the quiet buyers at Target who go home and just enjoy the hobby. The quiet kids who just go to the store and talk about with their friend groups that we never hear about. You know, we will never see that. Only Walmart and Target, who have the data for those sales, will know. So anyway, those are my reasons why. The Pokeshed says, hey Scott, probably late to the game on this one. Been on vacation. Got some golf and fishing in. Man, you'd fit right in with the hockey guys. They all golf, and all of them golf. Some of them fish. I don't really do either. But did it catch Magikarp though? I was just wondering, with most PSA service shutdowns, are you still submitting cards through Super Express? If so, how do you determine cutoff value, with the cost being 200, 300? Seems only the higher end vintage really worth the time to grade. Love your thoughts on this. Best regard, Pierce. Also a good name, by the way. Really like the name Pierce for a number of reasons. Yeah, I have some that I need to send in, just been behind. And you're right, it is just basically high end. Like I have some fan club promos, first edition base, grand party, things in that range. Yeah, not a lot of my more common stuff just collects dust, just waiting for a cheaper option. But I'm in the process of like phasing out a lot of the small stuff. So anyway, yeah, I'm in that boat. Send a lot less in right now because you basically answered your question. You just cannot send in things worth less than those fees. So that's really just what you're stuck with. I mean, that's really it. Unless you want to speculate on, okay, I'm going to hold this for a long time, be able to go up. But other than that, you know, it really is what you've already laid out. Jordan says, hey Scott, hope live is treating you well. Thought I'd plug this in on time earlier, but all good. Here we go. How has studying philosophy influenced your life as an entrepreneur and investor? Ooh, that's a good one. I would say the general answer for philosophy, because it's always hard to capture like how it improved my life. It just enhanced everything. Like it's like if I'd imagine going Super Saiyan, that's what studying philosophy was like. It just enhanced everything across the board, because I feel like it applies to so many things you do in life. It applies to so many things you do. Where like, I'm not trying to pick on anyone else's degree or any other field out there, but like, let's say you go get trained as a nurse. You're really just being taught technical knowledge that's applicable to the field you're getting into. And I'm not denying that there's some layover and overlap to other relevant things in life. Or if you get into certain like technical degrees or whatever it is, even like programming, things like that, a lot of it is really applicable to your end point, your end goal. Or with philosophy, it's the opposite. And of course, the opportunity cost of that is like, yeah, if you go into nursing, guaranteed job. You go into like programming, guaranteed job. Like that is the benefit that philosophy is not going to give you. But I think on the other side of that coin is that you get this large, like this breadth of knowledge that it helped me in every facet. I can't say it enough. Like if me studying philosophy was like one of the best choices I've ever made in my entire life, bar none. It helped me with my business. It helped me with my life. It helped me with my maturity. It helped me with finances. It helped me with everything. And maybe part of that's because of how I applied it and part of how I see the connections more. Maybe that's part of the personal side of it. But yeah, I can't say enough about philosophy. And it's interesting when you start really digging through people like who do comedy, especially. I think comedy and philosophy are tied at the hip. I think, in fact, some of the most modern philosophers, in my opinion, are like comedians. There's a lot of things out there that I think where it really directly applies. Writing shows, you see a lot of people in there that have background philosophy. It just applies to so many things like finance because it's the logic. Like there's so much there. So yeah, I can't say enough about it. It's definitely enhanced everything I do. That's just the takeaway. And I'm glad if I sold everything today and didn't do collectibles anymore, I'd probably just study philosophy in my free time. It would be, that's what I planned to do initially, was to go all the way with it, and then collectibles got in the way. David says, I've been watching a lot of sports cards openings recently, and it's baffling how many variants there are, like numbered cards, autos, patches, number combinations. Do you ever see a future where Pokemon cards gets more optimized, or by nature of it being a playable game, do you see it staying similar to what it is now, being more organic? Yeah, I would be shocked if we go down that road. We've been talking about alternate arts for ages. Like, that's the thing everybody wanted. We finally had them. Pokemon is just so much more art based. When you look at those cards, the benefit of it being fiction versus reality is that you have to draw this stuff, you have to design it. So it's so much more art collecting than sports is. Sports is more history collecting. And which I like that too. Like when I look at my hockey stuff or any sports piece I have around here, even like a signed Mickey Mantle ball, whatever it is, like that's a moment. Mickey Mantle's touched that ball, signed that ball. It's more historical focused. Where with modern sports, to me, modern sports is crazy speculative. Like I want to see these guys like $4 million for whatever rookie. I'm like, dude, come on down to Pokemon. Like seriously, like just the organic historical rarity value to me in Pokemon is just unparalleled. It's like the closest to art in my opinion. Like it's so close to like art, where art's like, okay, this is the actual like painting or whatever. That's what I feel like Pokemon does really well, whether it's super rare or common cards. So yeah, I'd be astonished if they ever did that type of stuff. It's just not in their lexicon. It's just not in their world. Like it's not their thing. So anyway, good question though. That's something a lot of people ask about. And like Arita signed patch Charizard or whatever. Zubat says, hey Scott, your Patreon's always great, but as of late I've been an invaluable resource for navigating the waters as prices have cooled off. Thank you for offering this service and being diligent with uploading every month. As to my question in your MMR, you said amazing rares were undervalued, but you singled out Celebi. Do you mean Jirachi? Celebi is the same price as the others, but Jirachi's still like 40 in Japanese. Thanks for clarifying. Also, do you prefer English or Japanese? Oh, okay. So yeah, thanks for the compliment, by the way. Actually, I remember when people were talking about Patreon, and I told them, I was like, actually, the biggest value is when the market dips. Because I was like, anybody and their dog can go say, big price, whatever, this new record price, new record price, new record price. The hardest thing to do is to navigate when prices go down. So anyway, appreciate the compliment. Don't want to hurt myself on the back too much with that one. But yeah, good question about the amazing rares. I forgot to specify because I do most things in Japanese, that's like my de facto. So I was referring to the Celebi in Japanese, primarily the ungraded mint copies that were available. And normally I wouldn't claim ungraded mint, but because it's Japanese new back modern card, I think it's fair to say, when a Japanese seller says it's unused, it's most likely going to be probably PSA 9. I think there's a very safe claim. So that's what I was buying up. I didn't buy too many of them. The one I bought a bunch of was Kyogre. And I know Kyogre's not as rare, but to me, like I had it sitting here on the desk and I just looked it up on a whim and I saw it. No, I actually saw Chansey in Discord post a handful of them. And I'm like, what? And I was just like, how you bought that many of them? And I looked at the price and I'm like, yeah, I need to buy that many of them because it's like stupid. It was like $2 or $3 a card. Like stupid, just stupid. To me, it's like, I don't even care if that card goes to $5. Like that card can be $5 to me lifetime or $10 to me lifetime. It just doesn't make any sense. Like take a deep breath. It's just they look too good. Like I think those cards just look too good. So anyway, yeah, I'm primarily focusing on Japanese. The problem I always have with English is Japanese releases are so much more discernible for me than English. Like look at the difference between Evolving Skies versus Eevee Heroes and its counterparts. It's just not the same. Like already, English prices are lower than Japanese. And it used to be the opposite. It used to be Japanese comes out, prices are going like this downward a bit, and then English comes out and it's like everyone's, stonk city. Where now it's like English is right out of the gate lower than Japanese, which didn't used to happen, going back previous 2020. So anyway, there's my long-winded answer. I was referring to the Japanese ones. And honestly, I prefer them in general aesthetically over English. I like the silver white border more for the Amazing Rares. I think it helps. Maybe you could argue certain ones, like I remember Shining Legends or Rayquaza, I think looked a little bit better because the yellow accented it. But overall, I prefer the silver border for Amazing Rares. I think it just looks better, looks cleaner. That's entirely a personal opinion, though. Vandy says, "Hey Scott, thanks for another great MMR. My question this time may be something that you can't talk about. Do you have any behind-the-scenes information what happened to the English Gold Star dogs? The Team Rocket smelled them out of the factory. Thank you." So yeah, I'll just do a quick legal waiver that everything I'm about to tell you is just my opinion, feelings, emotions, impressions from a grandma house. Just 100% opinion. So yeah, I think what happened with that is you definitely had someone who just snuck out all these cards from the factory. It's one of the reasons why I always heavily caution on these obscure factory whatever cards that slip out the back. It's so amazing how in the past 2 years, when the market has just really become mainstream and increased overall in price and market cap, all of a sudden these cards just slip out of the factory. I don't know what it is. The factory door just must only open when the market cap is over $1 million. It's just amazing how that works. That must be, you have to have $1 million open up that door. So yeah, that's what happened. It was, it's one of those things where it's really hard to capture how actually problematic it is, because I'm someone who's not on either end. I'm not on the one side where I'm like calling the police. I'm not on the other side where I don't think it's a big deal at all. I think it's somewhere in the middle, and even the people involved, I don't necessarily blame all of them, because it is legit, especially now when people have no problem putting a card in a CGC case because it's got the correct printing, whatever, and it obviously wasn't officially released. If people don't have a problem with that, they can't complain about the gold stars. It's the same deal. So I'm very conservative. I don't like to have that type of stuff exist, but I acknowledge its existence and I live with it. But why I caution so heavily on those air, factory, whatever, especially the ones that are like, oh, this card was only this and only that, and I'm the person who made it, and I'm the person telling you how rare it is. That's a major conflict of interest. I don't get down with that, but overall, yeah, they're just extra copies someone snuck out, and they sold them to make money. Probably either meant to be destroyed or were maybe, who knows, the logistics of it all. But yeah, it's that simple. Just extra copies, came out of the factory. You see more of them now than ever because there's money in the market. Evaner says, "Hey Scott, how do you manage to keep liquidity when heavily engaged opportunities are everywhere all the time? It seems, and I'm struggling to remain liquid. It causes me to miss once-in-a-lifetime auctions like a Pikachu trophy, for example." So it's all relative, and luckily I've outpaced the averages in Pokemon. So like my cash standard that I keep is well above like what the average stuff is doing in Pokemon. So that's my answer. But I don't have to fire, and what that does is it allows me not need to fire sell, and that was the whole irony with the PWCC restriction on the Illustrator, because I'm like, they're like, yeah, we need to see this much in an account, and I remember just being like, dude, I've spent so much money with you, like the literal owner of your company is in my phone, like I talk to him whenever I want. Text him the other day about how it sucks that they got booted, and yeah, the irony was like I had that in cash available, and I always have that, of that type of money available if there's something real, happening or some big opportunity. So yeah, it's hard for me I'm struggling to even say, because I don't want to sound like a braggart, but it's hard for me to say like what strategy to use, because again, I've been doing this for so long that, this has been incremental. All I can say, maybe what I can tell you is keep a certain amount at all times. Like I remember I used to keep 100,000. That was like a big threshold or turning point, tying in one of the other questions, when I remember I'm like, man, I got this much in cash. Like it was a big deal. And which it is. Like there's a lot of people in our age range who won't have that consistently in cash, maybe their entire life. And And my point is, like, I took it really seriously, but I was like, this is going to be my new standard. Is I want to have that much in cash all the time in case something comes up. And so, like, let's say I go and spend a chunk of that, I would just push out some inventory or whatever. And I just don't do things too impulsively. As you could probably tell from previous questions, I'm very patient, meticulous. I think a lot. I just take my time. Even this freaking question is taking way too long. So anyway, that's my answer. It's probably not the best because, again, I'm not in the normal boat. But yeah, all I can say is push out inventory. If you feel like that's a bigger opportunity, maybe just push out that inventory like a Pika trophy. Yeah, that was a big one the one that I could sign. I think that was a great opportunity. Steve Aoki just got it. So yeah, sorry I can't give you a really concise answer there, but that's my scatter plot response. Now it says, hey Scott, hope you're doing well. You guys hear that thunder? I don't know if that picks up on the camera. Hope you're doing well. Wanted to get your thoughts on the 1999 Game Boy Lugia. You're in my head right now, man. I could be wrong about this, but seems to be it's the first Lugia release with amazing art and extremely rare. Only 7 PSA 10 graded. How's it only going for $14.25? Am I missing something here? Oh man. Literally searched this card like 2 days ago. I did like a search all over the place to try to find some copies to buy. Found a couple actually in my inventory that I was pleasantly surprised about. 100% agree with you, man. One of the easiest questions to answer. I mean, you're in my head. Like, this is literally one of the cards I looked up because I thought the same thing. For how difficult it is to find / grade with a 10. Yep. That's all I got to say about that one. Yep, that's an easy answer. I'm in the same exact boat. Next up, Eric says, hey Scott, so parts of my collection have started to appreciate to the point where I'm considering putting it in a safe deposit box. I'm really conflicted about this because part of why I bought the cards to be able to hold it and appreciate in person. I suppose an alternative here is to invest more in home security options, but curious to hear how you stay connected to your cards while not having them in physical availability. P.S. Really appreciate everything you do for the community. Now you share your MRs and Q&As or something I look forward to every month. Glad to hear that. This is like the most complimentary Q&A ever. So why I started laughing in the middle of that question is because I think Admiral, the king of memes right now, took one of my statements I said in response to some of these Q&As where I'm like, yeah, I got safes, I got cameras, I got guns or whatever, and I'd shoot anybody on sight. But really, like, yeah, you should do some in-home type thing, bolted down safe. I have a lot of options. I have multiple locations of storage, vaults. Used to use safe deposit boxes, not as much. But yeah, I have a mixture of things out there. The thing you got to think about with those really big cards, and for everyone it's relative, is that at that point, you know, when it becomes that valuable, it is just bigger than a lot or probably all the assets that you own. You know, whether that valuation is speculative is another conversation. But the bottom line is, when it gets that much of becomes that much value, it also becomes that much of a liability in a sense. So that's really the main point. And what I do is, like, you know, when I talk about when I was in storage, I could talk about now as a question about the Lugia Game Boy. When I go to my certain storage options, you know, I'll go and look at those cards and see them. And luckily, because I'm a business and collect, like, because my business forces me to go to inventory at times, I get to see them maybe more than the average person. So anyway, just trying to really spell it all out that, yeah, I think most people have storage outside the house, safes, security systems, firearms if you can, buy them and use them. And yeah, I'd suggest all of that, you know. But yeah, it's got to be a choice up to you, how much you value having that item in hand to look at. All right, last few questions here. Misak says, hey Scott, I want to loop back around for NFT side of collectibles. Have you been keeping up with NFTs at all? How would you determine if you feel comfortable entertaining the space or not? Wayne Gretzky's NFT got released recently and are commanding very high prices. While I'm not going all in, I've been spending some money on building a collection of NFTs. All right, so NFTs to me are more of the whole like crypto thing vibe. I don't know, space, that's what everybody calls it, space that's happening right now. I'm not trying to overly naysay it. I'm definitely not going to overly compliment it because I think it's grossly speculative. but it's probably a great way for a lot of illegal money to be laundered. And that's one of the biggest unspoken elephants in the room. You know, everyone's like, oh yeah, art, money laundering. It's like, yeah, Bitcoin and NFTs, bud. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, it's just unreal, like how much money goes through there. Like when I look at some of these NFTs, and if anything, this is like an indirect compliment for the whole NFT market. When I see how much some of these like hole in the wall stuff goes for at volume too, like that's the thing that blows my mind. I'm just like, man, these people are throwing around money like crazy. And I'm like, oh yeah, because there's people who want to put money in here who can't, declare it anywhere else. And maybe in some weird warped way, I'd rather have that in markets benefiting, society, if you will. If we're gonna go out on a limb and be moral or philosophical for a second. So yeah, I think that overall, I think they're here to stay in some form or another. Right now, it reminds me of early crypto, where there's going to be a lot of shit coins that will go under, and things like maybe Wayne Gretzky's or the NBA Top Shot or whatever. Those might be the more sustainable options down the road. Probably also because they'll have more regulation and organization. But yeah, when I see some of those like thick Charizard, I'm like, how? Like, how is this happening? Like, it's such copyright infringement. Pokemon's so unaware of it. They don't care. But yeah, I don't know how those thick Charizards are going to be long term. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. Don't doubt it. Don't bet against Charizard is something that's been said before. And a thick Charizard, I don't know if you want to bet against that. So yeah, I'm really torn between it, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of things inside of NFTs. Some that I like, but a lot that I'm really cautious on is the best way to say it. I try not to be too negative because I think being too cynical will like miss opportunity and miss perspective. But there's things that really give me pause with NFTs, and basically the heavy speculation is where I'm like, all right, I'd rather just go into like collectibles, even if just the emotional side of it. I just like having the physical item to look at, and own. It's done, like it's not overly complicated. But anyway, I know that's the whole point of it. I know the point is to be a little bit more complicated. So anyway, that's my take on it. It's always going to be mixed probably, but yeah, some of those will stick around for sure. Lord Pokesmoke says, hey Scott, PWCC shielded me into paying $50,000 for PSA4 Unlimited Rattata. Does this mean all my eBay's executive team will now go to jail for slide slander? Jokes aside, do you have any extra insight into PWCC eBay situation? Seems like it's just eBay throwing a punch at a new competitor, but interested to hear your thoughts. I just released the public video on this. I'll talk about this in the MMR in its own slot. Actually, I have the notes still sitting here to the side from the video. Yeah, in short, it definitely feels like they're pushing out a competitor. Trying to think about what I can say and what I can't. Basically, not just eBay, but a lot of comparable companies and similar companies in a similar position as eBay, might be eBay, might not be eBay, are trying to do majority of what PWCC is doing. And when I say try to do, I mean literal carbon copy. Like going back to the beta. What did people naturally already do when they heard about the eBay beta? They're like, oh, this sounds like the PSA set registry. People already put that together. That's one of the public things that you can see right now. There's other things that may or may not be in the pipeline for a company that may or may not be eBay that are doing exactly what PWCC is doing. Combine that with the fact that PWCC is doing like 10 million on average a month now in their premier auctions, which is fees lost to eBay. Even if that's like $300,000-$500,000 in fees, that's money. That's good money. So yeah, it's a mixture of that, but it definitely feels like when Al Capone got finally arrested for tax issues, they could finally pin him down. That's what that feels like. It just does not feel like an organic, direct solution to an organic, direct problem. It feels like some type of thing going on behind the scenes. I think everyone's deducing correctly that it's because of the competition factor. So yeah, it just sucks. I wish it wouldn't happen. If PWCC or eBay would still get a ton of PWCC's business, and if they eventually migrate off, it's like, so what? They were going to do that anyway. Like, you still could have kept some of the money from their previous auctions. You get that data too. Anyway, yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like how it went down. Rubs me the wrong way, but there you go. That's my take on it. Dragonite Man says, what's up, Scott? Hope all is well with you, bro. Last year was an absolutely crazy year for Pokemon. I bought a ton of cards off hype fuel being in E4 Discord with some amazing people. I spent my job savings buying out about $10,000 worth of cards last summer. part of it was collecting, part of it was financial gain. Looking back, it was kind of reckless. However, I'm glad I did it though, because I completed a lot of the collections. Now I'm sitting on about 50,000 worth of excess Pokemon. For me, this is a lot of potential money, so I'm quite often tempted to sell a good portion of it, but always hesitate. The market was trending down. Am I fooling myself into thinking there's going to be another price boom, or would you hedge and just sell around 30%? How do you develop discipline of not selling too early? I'm talking about old PokeGym, Scott, when you didn't have a ton of capital before transitioning into bigger dollar cards. I thought that was you, the old Dragonite man from old PokeGym days. You have that OG calmness to you. That's a thing. It's an acquired existence. It's like the Ascended Saiyan or something. It's a acquired taste. Yeah, that's a good question. So what I can tell you is right now I'm still selling, and I'm going to constantly sell. Ironically, I'm probably selling more than I was during the biggest boom price spike, back in 2020. The thing you have to look at, especially being an OG PokeGym person, is that like you really just have to sit down and say, okay, how much did I pay for this stuff? And if you really just want to clear that capital, it's like, who gives a crap if you're selling at the peak moment? I like the other questions earlier, I don't worry about timing the market. I'm someone who, I sold a Squirtle first edition base 10 for like $4,000 at the peak, and I sold one the other day for like maybe $1,500 or whatever it is. It's just like you just take it. What did I pay for those? Like on average, what did I probably pay? $10, $20. I don't care. Like, I think that's the right perspective to have. Like, rather than losing sleep over like, okay, unless you're paying top dollar for everything and you need to make top dollar, that's a really bad situation. But outside of that, it's like you probably still have some margin in all this. And yeah, it's just up to you. If you want to just turn that into cash, it's your choice at the end of the day. No one can really know for sure like how risk adverse you are, or like how much actual money you want to have versus cards. So yeah, that's more a personal thing, but all I can tell you is that I'm constantly selling regardless of market trends. Sure, I pick certain items here and there that I think, okay, this is a better item to auction. Some items I'm like, yeah, this one wouldn't do too well in auctions. Some I'm just like, I don't care, I have too many of these. I need to just put one of them in auction. Like, I'm not kidding you. I have some cards that have like 10 or 20 copies of graded. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I waiting for? Like, what am I doing like with this? Like, I have some cards that are going for like $500 now, and I have 20 of them. And it's like, what am I waiting for? I always do this. I have this weird psychological thing. So yeah, you don't want to go that far. You want to be somewhere in the middle of those two. So anyway, yeah, I'm always selling regardless of market trends, and just worry about your margins and worry about, how much of it you're actually underwater. And if you aren't on any, then it's just really a personal choice at the end of the day. Last couple questions. Leo says, hey Scott, hope I made the cut this month. Yes, you did. Right on time. Last two here. I love these sealed Meiji chocolate promos, mostly from 0506. From my own research, they are PCG promos with much of the artwork done by Yukamori and later available in the Pop series. They are very cool to me, but are they worth anything? For example, I have Pikachu 2005 with Mori's artwork from Pop 2 that I love. I can only find a few listings, all play condition, one PSA for $2,500. They seem to be on their own level of niche, almost like too niche. Yes, you basically answered your own question. That's what I was going to say before. The second you said Meiji, that was the first thing that comes to mind. It might as well be a synonym for niche. They're super, super niche. Like, the problem with a lot of them is they're not exclusive art. That's one of their biggest Achilles heels. And for the longest time, they were super cheap. They're still not really that expensive, but I'm talking like few dollars cheap for a long, long time. Excuse me. Last couple questions. That cough had to come in. So I think that's what holds them back, because they don't have the unique cards. Super cheap. That's really all I could say about them. Basically in an agreement with everything you said. Yeah, I personally, how I would treat the Pikachu or other cards like that. Like, I had a Pikachu card ass, which I think will be a similar, which will help your question. I had a 97 Pikachu card as PSA 10 that at the time was maybe a couple $100. And I'm just like, no. I have a Blastoise, Mewtwo, Charizard. I think pretty much majority of them in 10. And I'm just like, no, there's no way I would sell that card for $200. Like, why? Like, what? $200? Like, absolutely not, because it's just like, how can I get that card again? how easily could I get that card again? And I think that's how you should treat this as well. I think these cards are definitely, the price is definitely not going to reflect their inherent difficulty to acquire grade. Meji's also a weird one too, where I had a stack recently. I'm looking around on my floor in this disorganized office. I had a stack of them sealed and I started opening them to grade. I'm not exaggerating. More than half of them had indents. So I'm like, screw it. I'm not going to open any more of these. So yeah, that's my take on them. They're extremely niche. Their Achilles heels, they don't have, a lot of them don't have unique art, and they were cheap for such a long time, and they fly under the radar because they're from like the low point Pokemon. They get forgotten. A lot of the PCG ADV era really gets forgotten. For some reason, the LP really took off, and some of the LP is repeated art. It's the same in English, but just a holo or like a little stamp or something. But the PCG and ADV is just like a one-to-one for a lot of that stuff. So maybe that's why. But there you go. That's my take on the Meji promos. Last but not least, NW says, will you be at Leon Hart's Pop Shop? I would love to meet you and maybe even have a chance to buy some of your cards there. Yeah, I've not really spoken to Leon Hart about being at the Pop Shop. Last time I talked to him was about the different shop. He's trying to do that whole rare candy thing, which Leon Hart's a great dude, and I want to see him succeed or continue to succeed. But yeah, the Pop Shop, I'm more excited about the Pop Shop. Whatever, Pop-Up Shop. Why is that, side tangent, why is Pop-Up Shop like a thing? I feel like it's such a trendy word right now. So anyway, I get what it is, like temporary shop. It looks like a lot of fun. It sounds like magic. Hopefully you can pull it off. I think it's going to be just a nice, wholesome thing, for everybody to experience. But yeah, I don't plan on going. I have family members who, some are older, that I see pretty regularly, so I'm pretty disciplined when it comes to traveling with all the crazy COVID stuff going on. So yeah, that's really my biggest hurdle. I was really optimistic in like May to June when things started to really cool down. I'm like, great, I can finally like touch grass again. So yeah, if that changes, maybe I'll hop on a plane, but otherwise I don't have any plans. I would love to go to more events, like Collecticon, things like that. People have asked, but yeah, it's just a wait and see until things cool down and somewhat return to normal. I'm probably gonna be stuck here in the grandma basement until then. So there you go. That's what I have for this Q&A. This will close off August, and then next month will be the MMR. As usual, guys, thank you for all the support. Love doing Patreon. Always look forward to it. Was excited when I woke up today. I'm like, yes, I can record the Q&A. It's always fun to just talk shop with you guys, talk Pokemon. So I'm going to keep on doing this as long as the will is there. So I appreciate it. As usual, thanks for all the support, and I'll talk to you probably in a couple weeks, 10 days, somewhere in there. Until next time, guys.